Welcome to everyone who's joining us this afternoon for the Reactor session. Today's session is on Power BI introduction using UK population data. So it will run over the next 60 minutes, and that's inclusive of any questions that come through during the session as well. And today we're welcoming back Laura Graham-Brown. Laura has delivered plenty of sessions with the Reactor, so we're delighted to be welcoming her back again today. And this session will be recorded and will be made available on the Reactor YouTube channel shortly afterwards. I will post a link to that on-demand video in the meetup group where you signed up today. So just to go through some code of conduct before we get started with today's session. So hopefully you're seeing it on the screen in front of you. Really just a reminder to everyone to be aware of others. We may see a difference of opinion coming through in the Q&A. So just to really be respectful of those opinions coming through and welcoming to everyone who is with us today. So I'll hand over to Laura to kick us off.
Hi, thanks, Emma. Hi, welcome back to, if you've been here before, to one of my Power BI introduction sessions. And great to see new people arriving as well. So this is me. I'm active on Twitter. My handle is LauraGB. I've got a blog called Hatful of Data. On there is also a link to my YouTube channel. And I'm an MVP. Which means I probably talk too much, which is probably my thing. Please feel free to interrupt with questions. Okay, so what I will do is when the demos get to a certain point, I will look across and check in the Teams window to see what questions we've got. Okay, so please do put through the questions. If I can't answer them in the session, believe me, we will find a way of answering them out of the session. I will tweet out answers or whatever we need to do. Okay. Oh, I also don't have LinkedIn on there, but I'm also on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out to me on any of those platforms. So, making a report in Power BI. Okay, you can break it down into different parts. Getting the data, actually getting access to your data sometimes is a real challenge, especially in large organizations. Transforming that data into a sensible shape, we're going to do a little bit of that today. Modeling your data, putting in some relationships, which columns relate to which columns, putting in some calculations, etc. And then the visualization, and finally publishing our report, okay, up into the Power BI service. But it doesn't quite look like that when we look at the timescales of these things. So if we move on to our next slide, and there we go, that gives you a bit more of an idea of the time that's required for these things. Welcome back, Fernando. I've got a regular, it's great. He's good at the links. We've got the getting the data. Okay, I can't help you with that part. Apart from, do you know what? Be nice to the people that own the data. They will make your life easier, a lot easier. And the transforming and modeling you need to get right. So they are our priority parts today, to get the transforming and the modeling right, because then that makes visualizations and publishing easier. Okay, if you've got a good transformation and a good model, drawing the charts and drawing the other parts is easy. So before we even start all of that, there's an important part to do before you actually even open up Power BI. And that is to answer the question, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we bothering? So what are your questions to answer? So today's questions are going to be UK population. So what's population predictions? What have the ONS come up with as our population predictions? So is is our working population growing? Okay. So, and can we use Power BI to do a bit of forecasting? So I thought, given we've got quite a lot of data here, we'll be able to do some forecasting with it. Okay. So that's what we're looking at. It's a really simple little data set. It's not a huge one. Okay. but it gives a simple data set. It gives you an opportunity to have a play, and it's public data. Okay, so I'll show you where I get the data from it in a moment. I've managed to convince PowerPoint to stop playing. There we go. So we're going to take data from Excel, and I've actually downloaded the Excel. So I'll show you where I download it from. And we're going to use Power Query to do our transformations, and then we're going to use Power BI Desktop to use modeling. But it all comes with Power BI Desktop. Okay, so let's move on to our demo. So firstly, let me show you where our data is coming from. Okay, and I am going to put this link, I'm hoping I'm going to put this link into the chat. I confess this month I haven't sorted out my my blog post, but I will by this evening. So I will put into there the blog post with the references to all the resources that I talk about during my session. Okay, so this is if you're ever looking for Office of National Statistics for the UK has brilliant data sources. They're great. And what I've done is I've downloaded this file here. Okay. So let's go into Power BI. So I've downloaded, I started Power BI up already because it takes a couple of minutes to load normally. And if you are really new to Power BI, one, install it from the store. Don't install it by downloading it. If you can do it by store, do it by store, because then it will update every month. Okay, and at the moment, the Power BI team, I think last year did 10 updates. And we didn't have one in January, but there is a February update. So make sure that you've got the latest version. Also, there is an awful lot of things in here. Microsoft have provided all sorts of tutorials, etc., and these are all links. So this isn't just information. These are links. Go and have a look. Go and have a play. And the guided learning, I highly recommend. But I'm going to close that for the time being. And it's asking you, there's nothing in here to do at the moment because we've not got any data. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight in to getting some data. So because I've downloaded the Excel file, it's a local Excel file, I'm going to go to Excel up here. And you can tell I've already been there and checked where it is. So there's my file, and that's literally just a download. I've not done anything to it. And click open. If your file is stored on OneDrive or is on SharePoint, please do look in the ways of being able to connect up to those files. It's slightly differently if you want refresh to work and things. Okay, so I've got data here. The persons tab is the one that I want. Now the preview isn't particularly good. That's because it's got so many columns. It's hardly showing me. So 102 columns. What a delight. So you can't see much of the data in there, but it is there. But I need to clean it up first because this column 1, column 2, that's not how I want the data to be. So if you need to clean up your data, you need to do what's called transform your data. So I'm going to click on transform data. And this will fire up a separate window, which I'm hoping is going to open. Yes, it's opened in the right window, called Power Query. Power Query, I'm slightly biased, but Power Query is awesome. It can turn data around and make things work, etc. And it's tidying up, is basically given the posh name of transformation. So here's our Excel file. Over on the left here, we have our queries listed. And in the middle here, we've got our data. And on the right-hand side here is the name of our one here. So I'm going to take out the persons because that's a horrible name. And I'm going to call it population. And then we've got our applied steps, which is the transformation steps that are being done. So the first one is always called source. And if you look, it's going opening up the Excel file. And then navigation says, take me to the sheet persons. If you look, I've got a formula bar at the top here that's showing me. Now, if this is your first time into Power Query, that formula bar might not be there. And it's optional. I'm not going to do anything typing code up there today, I promise. But for those of you that do want to go down that path and you want to find some good resources, reach out to me. I'll point you in the right direction because I do lots of typing in there normally. But in the view, there's a tick for the formula bar. That's the one you're looking for, okay, in the top left there. So, Brandon, I totally agree. A buggy Monday is always a good sign that the rest of the week is going to go better. I promise. I'm known for having buggy Mondays. They're normally gone by lunchtime though, so hopefully it'll stay that way. And then the last one here is changing the type. It's just putting some these types in the top left-hand corner. But we'll talk about those in a minute, a bit more. But let's look at our file here. The first 6 rows of data there, I don't want. They're just information that I don't need. The last 5 rows of data here, I don't need the totals. I'll calculate my own totals. Is also I don't need to keep. So let's go to the transform ribbon. And on the transform ribbon, okay, in here, it gives you all sorts of things in here to click and change stuff, okay? So it's not the transform ribbon I want, my apologies, it's the home ribbon. So on the home ribbon, you'll see that there is a keep rows and there is a remove rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it simple by doing remove rows. And I'm going to start with removing top rows. So we're going to remove 6. It asks you how many, put in 6 and click OK. And there you are, those rows have gone. And you can see over on the right hand side here, we've got a new line that says remove top rows. It's got a little cogwheel. I can click and I can change that number if I wanted to. So we can do the same for the bottom to get rid of bottom 5 rows. So remove rows, remove bottom rows. And we're going to get rid of the bottom 5. So there we are. That's happened and those are that. Right. Now, the next thing is there's this row 2 here has got in it these hyphens. I really don't want the rows that have got that in. So what I'm going to do is a nice easy way to do filtering is to right click on the value that you don't want. And then on text filters, I can pick does not equal. And there you are, you'll see that it's put in there a filter of does not equal lots of those dashes. Okay, and again, we've got a filtered row step appeared here. Right, next part. We've got our row 1 here has actually got our column headings in it. So what we want to do is we want to promote that row. At some point, I'm going to meet Fernando and I'm going to have to buy him coffees because he's doing a great job on putting links in for me, even when unprompted. He's going to I need to promote that link up into the top. So I want that to become the column headings. So on the transform ribbon, there is a button here, first row as headers. So let's click that. And there we are. I've got my headers have gone right across. Okay, so that works quite well. Now, I've got a column here for every year. And although that seems as a really good way to display data, it's an appalling way to actually handle data. You don't want that. What you want is you want it unpivoted. So that I end up with an age, a year, and a value. Okay, so I am going to pick the ages column. And then on the transform ribbon, under unpivot, if you drop that arrow down, you'll see there is unpivot other columns. And what that does, let me press the button. And there you are, I get my 04 2018 and a value. If you want to see what it looked like before that, you can just click in the applied steps, one step up, and then click down and get one step in there. Okay, so you can walk up and down these steps and see what's happening. So let's just have a quick look at a few things here. ABC, so I'm looking at data types and column names. Okay, so let's start with data types. ABC for this one's fine because that 0 to 4 is text. This year, 2018, I don't want that to be text. I want that to be a number. So in the top left-hand corner here, there's an ABC. I can click on there and I can say it's a whole number. The year is going to be a whole number. And the population is also a whole number. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm also going to do my change types. Do all your change types at the same time. You'll only get one step. Okay, rather than doing alternating between things. So the next part I'm going to do is I'm going to rename some columns. So this one is going to be year. And this one is going to be population. So that's, I've got there, I've done my transformations. I think I'm happy with everything that's there. So let's click onto the home ribbon again. And let's do a close and apply. And this is the point at which it loads all the data. So in Power Query, it only gives you usually about the top 1,000 rows of data. Okay, but once I've done this, it's given me all my data. So just give it a second to catch up. Interesting, I haven't got fields there. Let's see if I can convince that. So who mentioned buggy Mondays? That's my issue. So if I click onto data here, you can see here's our data. It's come through. Okay, so that's at the top left of the screen. I've got a view of that one, and then I've got my data there. On the next one down, I've got relationships, but at the moment we've only got one table, so that's not very interesting. We'll come back to that one in a minute. So on this data view, so just checking that I haven't got any questions. Nope, that's fine. That's looking good. So on here, let's just do a really simple chart. Okay, so I'm just going to do a stacked column chart. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but let me show it to you, and then we'll work out some things we could do to change it. So I've got my columns here. They get listed alphabetically, okay, underneath the table. So I'm going to go for a stacked column chart. And so I clicked on stacked column chart in visualizations, and then I'm going to drag the chart onto the page. Okay. Now in this stacked chart, with that selected, in the visualizations pane, you get a whole set of things that you can put in there. Okay. So what we wanted on the axis, along the bottom row, I'm going to put in the year. And then I'm going to put in the population as the values. And not really that surprising, we can see there's our population increasing. Okay. And then I'm going to put in ages into the legend. Legend refers to color. Okay. So there we are. We get the color bands showing us how the population is across the divide of different ages across. Okay. And you can see at the top there, not really that surprising, that the very elderly, it's going up in number. There's an interesting issue down here that we've got the over 100 and over at the bottom here. That's because they're sorted alphabetically. We'll deal with that in a minute, I promise. So that's one issue. The other issue is that's not a particularly good chart because actually you can't see that there's too many bands of color in there for it to be useful. Okay. If you're having to look really carefully as to what a band of color is, you've got too many bands of color in there. So do go and talk to somebody who is good at layout. Okay, there are lots of people out there who are good at it. Us techie geeks aren't always the best people to talk to. One blog which I rely on for lots of ideas is a guy called Chris Hamill, who does some really, really nice things in here. And when I put up my blog post, I promise on my Hatful of Data, I will put it in there. So I want to limit this down to a few. I want to group these values that I've got at the top here into child, working age, and retired. I'm going to do some generalizations in here about retired, by the way. I'm going to turn around and say that 70 upwards is retired. Let's not get into the debate about what age people should retire. And let's also not get into the debate about children. I'm saying that up to 19, you're a child. Okay. So I want to create a table from that data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into Power Query. And so what I want is I want a table of all the unique values of ages. That's the table we're going to create. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a right click on population and I'm going to do a reference. Now you've either got duplicate, which will just make a complete copy of it, which is sometimes the best one to do. This one though, I think we can get away with doing a reference, which just means that I end up with one here. Population 2, we'll name it in a second, but the source is just says, just tell me whatever's in population. So we're going to call this one age ranges. Okay, now putting names in spaces is not, putting spaces in names, that's what I meant, is not an issue, okay, in here. In fact, it makes your report more readable, more accessible, and all sorts of things, okay? So the first thing, we just want a list of the ages to begin with. So I'm going to go for my removing the 2 columns of year and population. Don't use remove columns, okay? Choose columns instead. Because it allows you to change it later if you need to. So just get in the habit of, unless you are really sure about what you're doing, don't go for remove columns. If in doubt, use choose columns. So I'm going to take out year and population and click OK. And then what I'm going to do is I want the unique values in here. I don't want all the duplicates. So another way of finding, you can find it in transform. There is a remove duplicates in here. I'm going to find it in a second. I can't see it. This is because normally I come into here and I do a right click and I go remove duplicates. There will be a button there. And there we are. We've got our list of values. Okay. Now we had an issue with sorting. So we want to be able to sort them. But the problem is it's text. And if you sort these alphabetically, 100 will come just after or just before the 10 to 14. So we want to have a numeric value to sort by. Or if I can take the first number in here, that would work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for adding a column. That's the add column version. And then I want to do an extract text before delimiter, and I'm going to use the hyphen. So text before delimiter asks me what the separating character is. I'm going to put in a hyphen and I'm going to click OK. And there we are, we get a list. Now that 100 and over it's got some issues, but don't worry, I've got a workaround for this. I then want that to be a number rather than text. So I'm going to click on the ABC and I'm going to go for whole number. Now, that works fine for everything, apart from the very last one has got an error in it. So we just want to sort that error. So what I'm going to do is on the transform ribbon, there's a replace values. So I'm going to go for replace errors. Now I happen to know there's only one error. So therefore I'm going to replace that one error with the number 100. Okay, now that's a bit of a weird thing to do and something you might want to be able to find later on. So over here on my applied steps, I've got replaced errors and I'm just going to do a right click on that step there and I'm going to just rename it replaced error with 100 just so I can find it. And possibly even you could go to the properties here and the 100 and over, it's not older, it's over, causes an error. Okay, so I put a comment in there, let's click OK. Just to give you an idea, one, you can rename a step to help, and two, you can add a comment, which if you look there, when I hover my mouse over it, it gives me an explanation. Okay, so it really is worth doing to find out, to help yourself in the future, because believe me, in the future, you're going to have to come back to a report you never thought you'd have to look at ever again and fix it because something's broken it or something's changed. And you're going to have to understand what the previous you did. Okay, so it's always worth putting in those comments to the previous, to the future you, or to whoever takes over your report. So the other thing I want to do is I want to put in here adult, so I want to put in child, adult, oh sorry, working adult, retired. Okay, so as 3 categories. So we're going to this data, we're going to put in, we're going to add a column, and I'm going to make it a conditional column. So this is, so for those of you that understand Excel, this is an if, okay, or any other language you understand. So we're going to put this in as a category, and we're going to go for if the column ages, oh, so not ages, oh, text before delimiter, that's a horrible name, isn't it? Let's press cancel a second. And let's just give that another lower age. So it's the lowest of, it's the lower end of the age range. And now let's do our conditional column. I'm all for renaming columns to make things make slightly more sense when people look at them. Age range. So if lower age is less than or is less than 20, then we're going to put in child. And we're going to go if lower age is greater than or equal to, I think I have to use on this one. So work them out. Do make sure that you know where you want the different age ranges to go. Okay, so let's put that in as retired, and the else I'm going to put in as working adult. I suppose that should be a retired adult. Click OK. And there we are, we get it coming in there, and we've got our retired adults, working child. Check the data, make sure you're happy with it. And last thing, make sure before we press apply and load, make sure that all of your columns have a data type. ABC123 is a variant data type, so you need to, that's a bad one to have. Get rid of those ones. So that one's going to be, it's going to be text. Okay, don't make Power BI have to guess the data types. So that I'm happy with all that. Let's go back to the home ribbon and close and apply. So whenever you add data into a model, you need to make sure that I've got multiple tables over here. So I now need to make sure the relationships are right. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into here, and it's guessed for us. Okay, so what it's guessed is a relationship between these two. And if I hover over here, you'll see its ages in both of them are the relationship. Now, earlier I mentioned Power BI updates on a regular basis. And one of the new features that's come through is a new model view. Okay, at the moment it's optional, but I am expecting it to become, it's just going to happen to all your models. Okay, so there is an upgrade now button. And if I click on there you are, it's changed slightly. Okay, the arrow looks a little bit different. A 1 and a star, that was quite cool. And so my age is on both of those two. Okay, the other thing that you can do is there's some changes over here. Now, it's not going to make a difference to mine because my ages column happens to be at the top. But if your link column is not alphabetically at the top, it'll be mixed in amongst your data. So there's a pin related fields to top of card is quite a useful one to do. I realize it hasn't done anything in my model. Okay. And when you get to really big models, this little collapse in here is quite useful to only show the fields that are used in relationships. That makes very complicated models look a little better. Interesting that line seems to have completely vanished. Maybe that's my screen. I'll have to check that. So let's go back to my report and see what we can do. So in here, I can see my too many colors. So let's take out that legend. And let's put in a different legend. Of bringing in my my age range. Okay, now you're about to tell me that, by the way, that these are sorted in the wrong order again, and I'm gonna have to go and fix that. So I've got my different age ranges here. I've now just got 3 bands of color. Okay, so that we can actually work out what the different age ranges in there are. So what I want to do is I want to just, I'm going to do it very quickly. They're in the wrong order. I want these sorted into the right order, and there's multiple ways to do this. I'm going to do it a really simple way, which is to go back into my data. My Power Query, go onto age ranges, and I'm just going to add a new calculated column. So there's going to be a conditional column again. So we're going to put in a conditional column, add column. Now, some people will put an O1 before child and an O2 before working adult. I don't particularly want to do that. So I want to just call this range sort. And we're going to go for age range equals child, make that one number 1, add a clause, age range equals working adult, make that number 2, and make all the rest of them number 3. Okay, and click OK. Wow, we've got quite a bunch today here. No questions. So I've just put a range sort column in there, and I'm going to make it a whole number. Right? So back into our close and apply. So in order to make these sort properly, what we do is we go back into our data. So our data view in Power BI desktop. And this shows me my population data, but actually I'm going to go for my age ranges data. And you pick the column that you want to sort. So this is the one I want to sort. And I want to sort that one, sort by range sort. Okay, and then if I go back into my visualization, there you are, it's now fixed it. Okay, so if you've got data that wants to sort the data, it wants to sort in a particular way, this is the way to do it. And as you can see here, we can see the proportion of people over 70, so the retired population, is getting bigger. Okay, but actually our children is probably reasonably equal, and our number of working adults stays pretty flat. It's just the old people that are living longer. And as I'm heading towards that range, I'm not objecting. Okay, I'm planning to be 100. So let's have a look, see if we can do some calculations of this. Okay, so what I want to do is so one of my questions is what's the percentage of the population that's working, right? So we're going to write a new measure. And measures are useful ways of doing calculations that can be plotted. So, and this is writing in a language called DAX. Power Query is written in a language called M. Okay, and DAX is really simple in asking for which references to go for. There are two wonderful people who I refer to as the Italians, Marco and Alberto, who run SQL BI. And they do an awesome website. If I'm using a calendar, I use their website to give me the code. And if I'm writing any DAX, it's complicated. It starts with visiting them. Okay, they've produced a number of books as well. And by the way, Fernando, thank you very much for the Alluring BI is Chris Hamill's website. He is superb at layout and does some really nice, simple blogs. And if I get a chance, if I get time, I'm just going to do a very quick example from him in a minute. But SQL BI is the guy, and so yeah, if I keep saying it, Fernando's going to do me a wonderful job of finding me a link to it in a second. We should do duet sessions. We're going to do into here working percentage, okay, equals. So I'm going to do firstly, we're going to do we're going to create some variables. So I'm doing this as two variables, breaking it into stages, which is a great way to do these calculations. So we're going to do a total population equals, and this is going to be a sum. Okay, so in DAX, you've got the same kind of functions as you have in Excel, and we can go for sum, and then it shows you the kind of columns that you could try summing. So I'm going to go for population. Okay, and I've just pressed return. It's going to complain. It gives me an error, but don't worry, that's because it's not finished yet. So then we're going to go for var working population. Okay. So we want to do the same sum, but we want it filtered. Okay. So I'll answer that question in a second. I'm going to finish this measure first. We're going to go for the working population. So we're going to go for a calculation that's filtered. So to do that, you use a function called calculate. And calculate says, what do you want to do and how do you want to filter it? So what we want to do is we want to do a sum of the population again. And we want to do the filter that we're going to do is going to be age range equals, and in quotes, I'm going to put working adult. Now, sometimes it makes more sense if I use the number that's used in the sort, because that you can't misspell. And that I do quite often use. Okay. So that gives me my calculate. I've calculated two variables in there. One's called total pop and one's called work pop. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a return. And the return is going to be, and this is the value that's returned at the end, it's going to be the total population, sorry, it's going to be the working population divided by the total population. Now, that's going to work fine, but if you are doing dividing and there is any possibility that total population is, the divisor is going to be 0, it's better to use a function called divide. Because divide will stop the errors happening. So the numerator is the top number. The denominator, as my maths teacher used to say, is down the bottom, so that's why it begins with a D. And if it returns an error, so divided by 0 situation, I just want it to return a 0. That sounds sensible to me. Okay, so good habit, get used to using the concept of divide. And press return. Okay. So let me just prove that that measure has worked. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to unselect my chart. I'm going to bring in a little data card. Okay, so it's got a 1, 2, 3 in the visualizations pane. And it shouldn't be that big. And we're going to put the working population in there. And there you are, we get it. But it doesn't look like a percentage. So I'm just going to select that measure again. And this gives you the measure tools ribbon. And in there, I'm going to format the measure. So whenever it's used, it comes up as a percentage. Okay, so there we are. It's come up as a percentage. My apologies, Fernanda. I don't think I explained to anybody about the fact that we've got data in the future here. If I just do a quick go back to where we're getting the data, it's the UK population looking, so start in 2018 and using historical data, it's predicted the population going forwards. So that's why, so I probably should have put UK population predictions as my title, really. So that's showing you the UK pop over all this period. So what they predict. If I go and pick a particular year, so if I go and pick in a particular year there, oh, let's not pick that, let's pick a year. Okay, let's pick, can I pick 2040? So you're gonna let me pick that whole year? No, it's not going to let me pick that whole year. So what I'm going to do is, if I pick the orange, it picks it all. I'm just going to try and work out a way of picking a whole year. I'll do that in a second. But there you are. It's starting to, that's not the way. Oh, I've got something wrong there. Pretty certain the 58.45 is correct, but I'm going to have to think about why I'm getting a weird number if I click on there. I'm gonna come back to that one because I was expecting that to come up as 0 because none of them are working adults. I'll think on that. If I don't manage to solve it whilst you guys are here, I will tweet out why in what my resolution on that one is. So let's take that chart and make it a bit smaller for a second, and let's bring in a line chart. Okay, and I'm going to put into there the year along the axis, and I'm going to bring in that working population percentage as my value. And you can see here that actually they've got it going down from the year 2020 all the way down to 100 years time. It's slowly going down. Okay, you can't really see it there, but you do need to be really careful about charts, of course, because this chart is starting at 55%, okay, and working its way down. So actually we're seeing a change here going forward, okay, it's starting up here at 63 and going down. Okay, so one of the things I suggested we could do in here was do some predictions. So let's see if that works. And a trend line. Okay. Oh, I've missed questions. My apologies. Before I do trend line, I'm just going to have a quick look at the questions. What were my questions? We have a quick look. I'll just have a quick look about those. And thank you, Fernanda, for putting up SQLBI. Yeah, Mike, I'm not sure why my measure was doing what I did manage to pick 2 children at the bottom there. Oh, that one worked. I want a way to be able to pick just pick 1 year. Okay, but I'll show you a way we can do that in a second. But there we are, we've got our year going down. We've got our percentage going down, our working population going down, and I imagine if I put the retired population, you'd see a line going the other way. But let's put a trend line in. Okay, we've got quite a few data points there, so we should be able to put one in. So with your line chart selected, I don't do a huge amount on formatting. I apologize, but there's lots of things you can do in formatting regarding colors, text sizes, and all those things. But the next one across is analytics. And analytics, we can put in a number of things into here. So we can put in a trend line. So I can add a trend line. And there you are. You've got a dotted line showing you where it thinks it's going to go. Okay. And we've got enough data here to be able to do a forecast. And it asks you, what do you want that forecast length to be? So how far into the future do you think it's going to be? So I think it's done 10 years there. Okay. And you can do a number of things. You can do changing it as you want. If you've got seasonal data, if you're looking at sales and seasonal data, you can work out those kind of things in there. Okay, it's not a big forecasting model that I would expect the analysts who are doing incredibly complicated forecasting in there to use. There are plenty of blogs out there that will give you ways of doing that, and quite a lot of them involve R. Okay, so it's not to that level, but if it's got enough data, it can give it to you to a certain degree. Okay, and if you look in there, there's a grey line around it. So let me just try forecasting it. Let's just try taking it to a bit of an extreme so you can see that grey a little bit more. And then click apply. And there you are, you get a grey line coming here, and you can see there's a grey fuzz around it as to how confident it is with it. Okay, and you can change these parts so that we can see it at the different. You've got to remember to click the apply. That's the part I don't get. And if you take it to be even higher, to the high level of confidence level, you'll see the grey expands. So how confident are you with it? Okay, it's worth having a look at some of your data, and it does the seasonality one quite well. I did one for a client based off their ice cream sales, and that worked quite well. We could plot that with weather, and that worked quite well. So one thing I want to do before we move on, okay, any questions? Let me just check the questions first. So with regards to selecting the years, okay, one nice thing that we could do on this chart is there's a new feature. So I'm going to show you a new feature on here, and then show you some other things that we could do. So let's put into here a zoom line. So there's a zoom slicer. I'm going to take it off the y-axis, so it doesn't really make sense there. But you can do, so this is a nice one if you've got lots of columns, but you want people want to be able to see what's going in at detail at a particular point. Okay. But if you wanted to just limit the number of years showing in your prediction here, you could also bring in a slicer of the year. So here's the slicer. And I'm going to put in the year into that slicer. I'm just going to put that up there for the time being. Okay. And we can now bring in, so I could now turn around and say, if I just filter that, if I do that and let that go, there we are. All of my charts are now limited down. The confidence down here has gone down as we've got a bigger grey because we've got less data. Okay. So we can zoom in and out on our data. So you've got to work out what people will want to see and how that's going to work. Okay. So we've got on here, we've got a chart, we've got a measure calculation being plotted, and we've got a card showing a value as well. Okay. So what I want to do next is before I publish, this is typical me on a report, by the way, in the fact that it's not particularly laid out, it's not very well laid out, it's not very pretty, but I want to just show you a really simple way of making a chart pretty, doing that layout feature. Okay, so this is stolen completely from Alluring BI. Let's give credit where credit is due. And I forgot to start PowerPoint, so I am just going to start up a thing of PowerPoint. Oh, and it's jumping me around. So there we are. We've got a blank PowerPoint. And I'm going to go for layout, blank. Okay. And what I'm going to do into here is I am literally just going to convince it that I don't want to start the slide. I don't want to do anything with my slideshow for a second. I am literally going to do some inserting in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert a line. I'm going to keep it reasonably simple. That line there. Let's put into that line there the shape outline. Let's make that line a little bit thicker. You can make it fit your branding. Okay, so that you pick your colors. That doesn't look straight to me. Oh, it thinks it is. And we're then gonna, and then sometimes I put one at the bottom as well, but we won't today. And I'm just gonna bring it in a logo. So let's insert a picture. That's not what I wanted to do. My apologies. Insert stock images. And let's go for an elephant because, hey, I can't think of a population, a population, I don't know, people. They're all too busy. My apologies. I normally go with one in here, but actually I've already preloaded. So there we go. That'll do. That's population. So I'm going to put that logo up in my top right. You might put in all sorts of things into there, and you arrange your back. So we could put in smiling faces, whatever we want to put in there. I'm keeping it really simple, right? But I want this to be a background. So here's the trick. The last thing I do is I insert a shape, a rectangle, and I make that rectangle fit my whole screen. Okay, and I make that rectangle have a fill of no fill, and I also give it a no outline. Okay, and then what I do is I press Control A, which picks all of my drawing things. So you can see I've got the line, I've got the logo, I've got the outside, and I can then do a right click and save as picture. And I'm just going to go and save it into the same. I'm going to save it onto my desktop purely for time. And I'm going to call it UK Pop. Okay, so now let's switch back to my Power BI. Let's find Power BI again. Here we go. So now I'm going to go into formatting my background of my page, and I'm going to come into here. So I've clicked on my page, no visuals are selected, and make sure that you've got the formatting of your page. And I'm going to go to page background, and I'm going to add an image. And I put it on my desktop, and I called it UK Pop. There we go. Now, here's some oddities. By default, it's transparent. So let's stop it being transparent. And also, unless you've resized it, the fit is possibly wrong. In this case, it's too big. So my normal fit there, I changed to be a fit. Okay, and there you are, that blue line has appeared. And one of the tricks to also do is to take some of your visuals that are overlapping maybe with the things in the background and to turn their background off. If I turn the background off, it becomes transparent. Okay, and I could then decide, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I could then decide to move my filter to maybe be underneath it, or it could be in the top there. Okay, so we can pick and choose where things are going to be for layout purposes. I could even make this one a lot smaller. And Chris Hamill has some really good backgrounds that he uses. He's a lot better graphics than I am, with some boxes and things, so that you can put your filters, etc., into colored areas on your screen, so you can organize your screen into some lovely layouts. So I highly recommend that one. We're going to put in a text box. I realize I'm about to hit time. I'm going to slightly overrun, my apologies. So I put some, can't spell, predictions. This box appears, which is driving me nuts recently, to help you do formatting. And then it'll move. Okay, so you bear with us. So I'm making a title for my page, and I'm going to put the text up a bit. Okay, so that'll do. I'm going to turn its background off so I don't need to worry about it. And then I'm going to move it to be at the top of my page. Okay. So I've got my report there. It's a pretty basic report. I've not done anything amazingly clever apart from deal with some data, but it does give people a chance to have a look at my data. So make sure things are lined up, make sure it's all pretty, okay? If you have a color scheme in your business, you might want to have a look at themes and pick a theme that's going to fit color-wise, okay? So pick whichever color theme, and if you have got a theme, you can customize this one and you can save it. Okay, haven't got time to do that today, guys, but it's worth having a look at it. Now let's publish it. So let's go to File and click Publish, or I could have gone to the Home ribbon and clicked Publish and click Publish to Power BI. It wants to save it before you do that. And let's save it on the desktop again. Why not? Okay, pop. And click Save. And then hopefully it's going to remember that I pressed Publish. Any questions? Oh. Wow, quite a bunch today. I also need to come up with something controversial. Just while this is running, the next session we're going to do, or I'm going to do, is not till April. Okay, I'm taking a breakout because my life is getting busy. But in April we're going to do a introduction session to paginated reports, which are now a little bit more available to everybody because of the premium per user has become, we'll know how much it's going to cost then. So here's April. Hopefully we'll know at the beginning of March because I'm expecting it to come out in Ignite. I'm going to publish it to a workspace. If you don't have a license, the only place you can publish is my workspace. If you have a pro license and access to workspaces, you can publish to a workspace. And it will go and publish it for you. And then it gives you a link. Okay, so I can click on that link, which will open a browser, hopefully logged in as the right person. Looks hopeful. And then you have your report so that your users can click and change the data. So there's the chart. Okay, so we can see how our population changes by moving the slice, so we can see the working population percentages, etc. So that was taking an Excel file from the Office of National Statistics and putting together a report. Okay, so any questions that are left? I don't see any. So let's go back to, let's see if I can find my, it's not in this window. Let's go back to my presentation. That's not the presentation. Oh, that's not the presentation either. How bizarre. That's the presentation. There we go. So if we go to the next slide down, so great resources. GynaCube, Adam and Patrick do a stunning job of making it, of doing lots and lots of videos and live sessions on Saturdays. The live sessions on Saturdays are awesome. We've become quite a little community there, which is great. They both work for Microsoft, but Microsoft don't pay them to do GynaCube. They do it in their own time. Adam gets up at silly o'clock in the morning to do it. And then there's the Italians, Marco and Alberto, who I've already mentioned. And I've also got a blog and videos. Hatful of Data is the URL for my blog as well. There will be a post on there this evening covering the links that Fernando has put in there. So to answer the question someone's asked, can we go through the whole session again? It's going to be recorded. It takes a couple of days for it to go up on to the YouTube for the reactor, but it will be there. And I will also blog out. I will also put it at the top of my blog when that's in there as well, and I will put tweets out as soon as it goes live. Okay, it's normally up there by the end of the week. Okay, but if you have any questions, do reach out to me and I will help. And what I'll also do is I will put up a copy of the Power BI report, link to the Excel files, etc., up onto a blog post this evening.
Thanks, Laura.
That's my last slide.
Brilliant. I think we are just about on time. So I'll also probably just paste some links into the Q&A as well for people to access. So that's including the Learn TV resource that's on the screen now. Let me pop that into the chat, as well as the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel, and that's where this session will be posted. So like Laura mentioned, it's usually by the end of the week. So if you keep an eye on the YouTube channel, you'll see it pop up in the new videos. Great. Laura, thank you so much for another excellent session. It's been such a pleasure to have you back. Can't wait for the next session in April. We'll be sending out details shortly on the meetup pages as to when exactly that will be, but somewhere around mid-April. And thank you to everyone who's attended, for your questions, for interacting throughout as well. Really hope to see you again at the next session. And take care and have a good evening for now.
Take care now.